2020 marks 40 years of CNN. The first broadcast was 5 p.m. on June 1st, 1980, changing the face of news ever since. Now the story of how it came to be is being told in the new book, Up All Night, Ted Turner and the Birth of 24-Hour News. And I'm joined now by its author, Lisa Napoli. Lisa, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
And let's start off with an easy question. Why write this book now?
Well, the 40th anniversary was the real impetus. I thought it was a really good time to step back in time because cable news has become so polarized and see where it had come from, what the climate was 40 years ago and how it was different than it is now.
And, of course, you have a personal connection to CNN, having been a summer intern there back in 1981. What was it like to get your feet wet in the industry in a place like that, especially almost on the ground floor in its early days?
Well, that's the thing. It's hard to explain because back then nobody really cared about CNN. Very few people knew about it. Very few people could see it. It wasn't an international force, so it was very easy for a young person to start out there. And I only mentioned in my bio that I had worked there, and I did actually start my career there when I got out of college, just because that was another reason I was curious at this stage in my career to look back at this place I'd worked early on that had become this major force. But it really was just dazzling for a kid who had no experience or exposure to the inner workings of the media, to see how any television operation worked, even one that was at the time really little known.
Now, one of the treats of the book is getting to relive Ted Turner's backstory. Here's a guy who took his father's billboard business and turned it into a communications empire, and he wasn't given very good odds of success when he announced the formation of CNN, now was he?
No, nobody believed. He was a wild man, and nobody believed that he could pull it off. He didn't have any background in news. In fact, he was on the record as saying that he hated news. And so a lot of people in the media world just couldn't imagine that anybody would want to watch 24-hour news and that Ted Turner could pull it off. He had this wild reputation as a playboy. He was a yachtsman who would be publicly intoxicated at ceremonies, and it was a no-hold-barred kind of, no filter kind of man. So, news was such a somber, sober quantity, it was hard for anybody to imagine that he would be associated with it.
And it'll be interesting as well for a Vancouver audience to hear that the look or the open concept newsroom that CNN had at its early days was in part inspired by one of its local TV newsrooms. Yes, I was very excited to talk to you because apparently it used to be called Chan Television. It was an independent television station. And there's a wonderful scene in this history of CNN where the man Ted Turner hired to be its president went with an architect to look at the Chan TV facilities, which apparently were pioneering in the open newsroom concept. And now that's something we're all used to, seeing people scurrying in the background or, a live set as opposed to just a really staged and somber one. But it started there, and also, interestingly, the president of CNN, Reese Schoenfeld, and the architect were there at the exact moment that Ted Turner went missing in a terrible yacht race, series of accidents. And so it wasn't clear when they arrived if CNN would even continue, although it became pretty quickly clear that he was okay and that the show would go on. Now, having worked with some former BC TV folks, I can tell you that they're still quite proud of that fact that they inspired CNN. Now, as your book shows, CNN's impact on news coverage was practically immediate, especially when it comes to goings-on in Washington, D.C. I guess the first big story to break on its airwaves was the attempt on President Reagan's life in March of 1981. For those perhaps too young to remember, how much of a shock was this event? Well, it's so hard for us to imagine now that you don't just turn on the TV or you look at your phone and see exactly what's going on in the world. But in 1981, that was remarkable to be able to do that and to see videotape instantaneously after the event. They didn't know right away what had happened to the president after he'd been shot. And the idea that
news networks would go on the air without complete information was remarkable and revolutionary. Of course, when President Kennedy had been shot here years before, a similar sort of unfolding of events occurred, but that was similarly revolutionary and no less so in 1981. And it really clued in people, especially the Washington press corps, who were enormously skeptical that Ted would pull this off or that anybody would want to watch, that CNN had some serious people on staff and that they meant business.
And I suppose the other lesson here with the assassination attempt was that news had become sports, as you put it, meaning a play-by-play of the events as they happen, not just a cold recitation of what had already happened.
Yes. Usually people were accustomed to tuning in the news at dinner time and having presenters show them packaged news. And here you were watching news. The news people didn't even know what was happening. The anchor at the time, Bernard Shaw, had no idea whether the president had actually been shot. None of the anchors did. So there was a thrill for people in watching that. And of course, you know, as a human, you could say there's a desensitizing that happens as a result of that. And frankly, I find it hard myself to watch TV, especially now with these unfolding events. I don't want to see it while it unfolds. I'm probably in the minority there, but I think that CNN certainly made that obvious to an audience that there was a hunger for that.
Now, the book the book ends in 1987, but also has a postscript in the year 2000, around the time that Ted Turner and the network have parted ways. In many ways, to me, it's a sad ending, especially given how the whole AOL Time Warner merger thing worked out. What do you make of the way that CNN has evolved since then?
You know, there's a huge dialogue going on in journalism just even today, where people are saying that news needs to have a point of view. I'm old-fashioned and purist. I think that they should trust us as the viewer or the reader or the listener to come up with our point of view. But I'm, again, in the minority there. And CNN has certainly evolved or devolved into that, where it is espousing a point of view. It was forced to do that by the creation of a competitor news channel, and then another competitor news channel came on the scene, Fox and MSNBC. So they had to carve out an identity that was a point of view. But I find that difficult to watch, and I think, you know, whether I agree with the point of view or not, and I think that, you know, I hear a lot of people from those early days, the pioneers who started CNN, who say that they disagree with that tactic too. Of course, everything is different now. The whole world is completely different, and you have to roll with it. But you don't have to watch it if you don't like it.
That's true, too. Can we expect a part 2 for your book? I mean, a lot has happened since the timeline of Up All Night, the first Gulf War, 9/11, and, of course, the time we're in now, which is the Trump presidency.
Yeah, you know, I think I would have had an easier time finding a publisher for this book if it had been more of a, all-comprehensive look at the 40 years. But to do that would have taken years, and I really was intrigued by the beginning. After it got underway and it became famous, there are many books that have been written about the Gulf War, which, you know, in so many people's estimation is what put CNN on the map, even though it was 10, 11 years old at that point. Tiananmen Square just had the anniversary of that. That was another seminal moment for CNN, and there are terrific books and films made about not just Tiananmen Square, the uprising, but the CNN's role in it. So I guess I'm really interested in the beginnings of something, and the rest other people can take care of.
Fair enough, and it's a terrific story, expertly told. Thank you so much for this, Lisa. This is Lisa Napoli, author of Up All Night, Ted Turner and the Birth of 24-Hour News. It's available from Abrams Books.
Thank you so much.